You trust your emotions. You follow them. You believe they are telling you the truth. But what if they are lying? What if the very thing you rely on to guide your life is the exact thing holding you back? Your anger feels justified. Your fear feels real. Your doubt feels logical. But feelings are not facts. This audiobook will break one dangerous illusion. Your emotions are not your master unless you let them be. If you don't control them, they will control everything: your decisions, your habits, your future. Today, you stop obeying your emotions. Today, you start mastering them.
Listen carefully. This is where most people get it wrong. They say, "That's just how I am. I've always been like this. I can't help it." That's a lie. Not because you're trying to lie, but because you've repeated something so many times you started believing it. Your reactions are not your identity. They are your training. You trained your reactions. Now retrain them. That's the key. Let's break this illusion. You think your anger is natural. You think your anxiety is part of you. You think your overthinking is just your personality. But none of that was there when you were born. You learned it. You repeated it. You reinforced it. You made it automatic. Every time something didn't go your way, you reacted. Every time someone disrespected you, you snapped. Every time you felt uncomfortable, you avoided. And what happened? You practiced. You practiced reacting without thinking. You practiced losing control. You practiced letting emotions lead. Now it feels automatic. Now it feels like you. But it's not you. It's conditioning. You trained your reactions, now retrain them. Think about this. The first time you got angry like that, it wasn't that intense. The first time you avoided something, it wasn't that automatic. But repetition builds strength, not just in the gym, in your mind. Every reaction you repeat becomes stronger, faster, sharper, harder to stop. That's why now, before you even think, you react. That's not personality, that's programming. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. If you keep reacting the same way, your life will stay the same. That's the cost. You don't rise above your habits, you become them. So if your habit is anger, you become an angry person. If your habit is fear, you become a fearful person. If your habit is hesitation, you become stuck. Not because life is against you, but because your reactions are controlling you. You have a choice. You always have a choice, but most people never use it. They feel something and immediately act on it. No pause, no awareness, no control. That's weakness. Not emotional weakness, mental weakness. Let's be clear, emotions are not the problem. Automatic reactions are. Feeling anger is normal. Exploding is trained. Feeling fear is human. Running away is trained. Feeling doubt happens. Stopping yourself is trained. You trained your reactions, now retrain them. Say it again. You trained your reactions, now retrain them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You've been rewarding your bad reactions. Every time you lash out, you feel a release. Every time you avoid, you feel relief. Every time you complain, you feel justified. And your brain learns fast. It says, "This works, do it again." So it does, again and again and again, until it becomes automatic. That's how habits are built. Not just physical habits, emotional habits. So when you say, "I can't control my anger," what you really mean is, "I've practiced losing control so much it feels impossible to stop." But impossible is not real. It's just unfamiliar. You've never practiced control. That's the problem. Let's take a simple example.
someone says something that triggers you. Immediately, you feel heat in your chest, your thoughts speed up, your body tightens, and before you even realize it, you react. You raise your voice, you say something you regret, you lose control. And later, you say, "That's just how I am." No, that's how you've trained yourself to be. And what is trained can be changed. You have a choice, right there, in that moment, between feeling and reacting. There is a gap, small, almost invisible, but powerful. That gap is your control. That's the key. Most people ignore that gap. They skip it. They jump straight from emotion to reaction. That's why they stay stuck. But you're not most people, or at least you don't want to be. So what do? You slow it down. You don't stop emotions. You don't fight feelings. You interrupt the reaction. That's the move. That's the shift. Next time you feel triggered, don't act, don't speak, don't move. Pause, even for 1 second. That's enough. Because that 1 second breaks the pattern, it weakens the habit, it gives you control. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. You'll want to react. You'll feel the urge building. That's normal. That's your old training fighting back. But this is where change happens. Not when it's easy, but when it's hard. You don't need perfection. You need awareness. You need interruption. You need repetition. Because just like you trained bad reactions, you can train better ones. Let's make it simple. Old pattern, trigger, emotion, reaction. New pattern, trigger, emotion, pause, choice, response. That pause changes everything. That's the key. And here's where most people quit. They try it once, they fail, they react again. And they say, "See, I can't change." Wrong. You're just not consistent yet. You've spent years building these reactions. You won't undo them in a day, but you will undo them if you keep going. You have a choice. Every time. Not sometimes. Not when it's easy. Every time. You don't need their permission to change. You don't need approval. You don't need validation. You need discipline. Because control is a skill, and skills are built through repetition. Let's talk about anger again. You think you're just an angry person. But look closer. You get angry in certain situations, with certain people, at certain triggers. That's not random. That's patterned. And patterns can be broken. Instead of reacting, observe. Instead of exploding, breathe. Instead of speaking, wait. Simple. Not easy, but simple. You trained your reactions. Now retrain them. Again. You trained your reactions. Now retrain them. This is not about becoming emotionless. This is about becoming controlled. There's a difference. Emotionless is numb. Controlled is powerful. When you control your reactions, you think clearer, you act smarter, you make better decisions, and your life changes. Not instantly, but inevitably. Because your life is shaped by your actions, and your actions are shaped by your reactions. So if you change your reactions, you change your life. That's the chain. That's the system. Let's go deeper. Every reaction you resist builds strength. Every pause you create builds control. Every moment you choose not to react rewires your brain. This is real change. Not motivation, not hype. Training. You are training a new version of yourself, one response at a time. And yes, You will fail sometimes. You will react. You will slip. You will lose control. That's part of it. But here's the difference now. You won't ignore it. You'll notice it. You'll learn from it. And you'll do better next time. That's growth. Most people never get here. They stay unconscious. They stay reactive. They stay stuck. But you're building awareness, and awareness creates choice. You have a choice. Say it again. You have a choice. Right now, your reactions are strong because they've been repeated, but every time you pause, you weaken them. And every time you choose control, you strengthen a new pattern. That's how transformation works. Not in one big moment, but in small, repeated decisions. You don't need to change everything today. Just one reaction, one moment, one pause. That's enough. Because 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 10, 10 becomes a new habit, and that habit becomes your new identity. You won't be the same person because you won't react the same way. You trained your reactions, now retrain them. That's your mission. Chapter close. Your reactions are not who you are. They are what you've practiced, and anything practiced can be changed. You don't need to stay this way. You don't need to keep reacting. You don't need to be controlled by emotions. You have a choice, and now you know it. But knowing is not enough. Next, you must learn how to create space before reaction, because control doesn't start with force. It starts with a pause, and that's where we're going next.
Listen, this is dangerous, not because it's obvious, but because it feels true. Your mind tells you things all day. Constant thoughts, constant interpretations, constant judgments. And you believe them without question. That's the problem. Your mind is not a truth machine. It's a story machine. Say that again. Your mind is a storyteller, not a judge. That's the key. Every emotion you feel comes from a story, not reality, a story. Something happens and your mind fills in the meaning. Fast, automatic, unconscious. You don't even notice it, but it's happening all the time. Someone ignores your message. What does your mind say? They don't respect me. They're avoiding me. I did something wrong. Now you feel hurt, rejected, angry. But stop. Did you check the facts? No, you trusted the story. That's how it works. Event, story, emotion, reaction. Not event, truth. Never truth. Always story first. And here's the dangerous part. Your mind is not designed to tell the truth. It's designed to protect you, even if that means lying. It exaggerates threats. It assumes the worst. It fills gaps with fear. Why? Because survival matters more than accuracy. So your mind says, better safe than sorry. But that creates a problem. You start reacting to things that aren't even real. You think someone is judging you, so you hold back. You think you'll fail, so you don't start. You think you're not good enough, so you quit early. All stories, not facts. You have a choice. You can believe every thought or question it. Most people never question. They just accept. That's weakness. Not because they're dumb, but because they're unaware. Awareness changes everything. The moment you realize this is just a story, you create space. That space is power. That's the key. Let's go deeper. Your mind loves patterns. It takes past experiences and projects them into the present. If you were rejected before, you expect rejection again. If you failed once, you expect failure again. If someone hurt you, you assume others will too. But the present is not the past, and your mind doesn't care. It replays old stories like their current reality, and you react to them again and again and again. You trained this. Every time you believed the story, you made it stronger. Every time you reacted, you confirmed it. Now it feels real, but it's not. Let's be clear. Just because a thought appears doesn't mean it's true. Just because it feels strong doesn't mean it's right. Just because it repeats doesn't mean it's valid. Your mind is loud, but loud doesn't mean accurate.
Think about overthinking. You sit there, replaying the same situation, analyzing, imagining, predicting, and what happens? The story grows. More details, more fear, more emotion, until you're reacting to something that never even happened. That's how powerful your mind is. It can create pain without reality. You don't need external problems. Your mind can generate them from nothing. So what do? You don't fight the mind. You don't try to stop thoughts. That doesn't work. You question them. Simple question: is this fact or story? That's it. That's the shift. Let's go back to the example. Someone ignores you. Instead of reacting, ask, what do I actually know? Fact: they didn't reply. That's it. Everything else? Story. You see the difference? Facts are simple. Stories are emotional. Facts are clear. Stories are dramatic. Your job is to separate them every time. You have a choice: believe the story or look for the truth. And here's another truth. Your mind loves negativity. It focuses on problems, threats, what could go wrong. Why? Because that's how it's wired. So if you don't control it, it will control you. It will pull you into negative stories constantly. You walk into a room and think people are judging you. You start something new and imagine failure. You make a mistake and label yourself as not good enough. All stories, not facts. But because you repeat them, they become your reality. Not actual reality, but perceived reality. And that's what you react to. You don't react to life. You react to your interpretation of life. That's the key. Change the interpretation, you change the emotion. Change the emotion, you change the action. Change the action, you change your life. It all starts with the story. You trained your mind to believe certain narratives. Now you retrain it. Same process, different direction. Instead of assuming the worst, look for neutral explanations. Instead of jumping to conclusions, pause. Instead of reacting emotionally, observe. You don't need to believe everything you think. Let that sink in. You don't need to believe everything you think. Most people never realize this. They live inside their thoughts, controlled by them, limited by them. But you're stepping outside, you're observing, you're questioning. That's power. Let's talk about identity. Your mind creates stories about you too. I'm not confident, I'm not disciplined, I'm not good enough. Where did those come from? Past experiences, repeated thoughts, conditioned beliefs. But again, they are stories, not fixed truths. If you keep repeating them, you reinforce them. If you question them, you weaken them. You have a choice. Keep the old story or write a new one. And don't misunderstand this. This is not about fake positivity. It's about accuracy. It's about truth. If something is real, face it. If it's a story, challenge it. That's how you build clarity. That's how you build control. Because once you stop believing every thought, you stop reacting to every emotion. And once you stop reacting, you start choosing. You become intentional, focused, calm. Not because life is easy, but because your mind is under control. Remember this phrase: your mind is a storyteller, not a judge. Repeat it. Again, your mind is a storyteller, not a judge. Every time a strong emotion hits, ask, what story am I telling myself? That question changes everything. Because now you're not inside the emotion, you're observing it. And observation creates distance. Distance creates control. This is how you break the cycle, not by force, but by awareness. And yes, it takes practice. You will forget, you will slip, you will believe the story again. But every time you catch it, you win. Every time you question it, you grow. That's the process. Not perfect, but powerful. Most people never take control of their mind. They let it run, uncontrolled, unquestioned. And it costs them everything: opportunities, confidence, peace. You're not doing that anymore. You're taking control, one thought at a time. You have a choice, always. Believe the story or find the truth.
We're not moving forward blindly. Let's go deeper, because understanding this at the surface is not enough. You need to feel it. You need to see it happening in real time. Right now, your mind is talking. Even as you listen to this, it's reacting, agreeing, doubting, comparing. That voice, that's the storyteller. And here's what most people never realize. You are not that voice. You are the one hearing it. That's a massive difference. That's the key. If you were your thoughts, you wouldn't be able to observe them. But you can, which means you have distance. And where there is distance, there is control. But you've been so close to your thoughts for so long, you forgot they're not you. You fused with them, believed them, obeyed them. So when your mind says, you're not ready, you stop. When it says, this might fail, you hesitate. When it says, they're judging you, you shrink. You don't question it, you follow it, automatically. That's not control, that's submission. And the worst part, it feels normal because you've been doing it your whole life. But normal doesn't mean right. Normal doesn't mean useful. Normal doesn't mean true. You have a choice. You always have a choice. Let's go even deeper. Your mind doesn't just tell random stories. It tells familiar ones, repeated ones, predictable ones. Why? Because repetition creates efficiency. Your brain wants shortcuts, so it reuses old patterns, old beliefs, old fears. That's why the same thoughts keep coming back. Not because they're true, but because they're practiced. You trained your thinking. Now it runs on autopilot. You see a challenge, your mind says, too hard. You face uncertainty, your mind says, danger. You think about change, your mind says, stay safe. Same script, different situation. And if you don't interrupt it, you live the same life again and again. Different days, same patterns, same limits, same results. That's not coincidence, that's conditioning. You trained your reactions, now retrain them. And it starts with the story. Because every reaction begins with a thought, and every thought carries a story. So if you change the story, you weaken the reaction. Let's make this real. You fail at something. Your mind says, I'm not good enough. That's the story. Now what happens? You feel discouraged. You lose confidence. You stop trying. But what if the story changes? Same situation, different story.
I'm learning. Now what happens? You stay calm, you adjust, you keep going. Same event, different outcome. Why? Because the story changed. That's your power, not controlling the world, but controlling the meaning you give it. You don't control everything that happens, but you control how you interpret it. And that interpretation shapes everything. This is where people stay stuck. They try to control life instead of controlling their mind. You can't control people. You can't control outcomes. You can't control the past. But you can control your response. You can control your focus. You can control your story. That's enough. More than enough. You have a choice. Say it again. You have a choice. Now let's talk about emotional intensity. Some thoughts hit harder than others. Some stories feel more real, more urgent, more powerful. Why? Because they're linked to strong emotions: fear, anger, shame. The stronger the emotion, the more convincing the story. Your mind knows this, so it attaches emotion to the story to make you believe it faster. That's manipulation, internal manipulation. And if you're not aware, you fall for it every time. You feel fear and assume danger. You feel anxiety and assume something is wrong. You feel doubt and assume you're incapable. But feeling is not proof. Emotion is not evidence. That's the illusion. You trained yourself to treat emotions as truth. Now you break that. You don't ignore emotions. You just don't blindly trust them. You observe them, question them, challenge them. That's control. And here's something important. You don't need to replace every negative thought with a positive one. That's not the goal. The goal is neutrality, clarity, accuracy. Instead of "I'm going to fail," you say, "I don't know what will happen." That's real. That's grounded. That's controlled. From there, you act, not from fear, not from illusion, from clarity. That's power. Let's talk about speed. Your thoughts move fast, too fast. That's why you don't catch them. That's why you believe them. So what do? You slow down. Not your thoughts, your reaction. You hear the thought. You don't act immediately. You create space. That space is everything. Inside that space, you decide, is this useful? Is this true? Do I act on this? Now you're in control. Before it was automatic. Now it's intentional. That's the shift. And again, you won't get it perfect. You will slip. You will react. You will believe the story sometimes. That's fine. Progress is not perfection. Progress is awareness. Each time you notice the story, you weaken it. Each time you question it, you gain power. That's how you retrain your mind. Not by force, not by denial, but by consistent awareness. You trained your reactions. Now retrain them. And understand this, if you don't control your mind, someone else will. People's opinions, social pressure, fear-based thinking, all of it feeds into your internal stories. So if you don't take control, you live a life shaped by others, not by choice, but by influence. You don't need their permission. You don't need their approval. You need clarity, because clarity leads to action, and action leads to change. Right now, you're building that clarity. You're learning to see thoughts for what they are, not commands, not truth, just mental activity, temporary, changeable, controllable. That realization changes everything. Because once you stop believing every thought, you stop reacting to every emotion. And once you stop reacting, you start choosing.
That's where real control begins.
Good. Now we go deeper, because understanding is not enough. You need repetition. You need pressure. You need to see this from every angle until it becomes automatic. Let's lock this in. Your mind creates stories. Those stories create emotions. Those emotions push you to act, and those actions become your life. So if the story is wrong, everything that follows is wrong. That's the danger. You don't lose control in big moments. You lose control in small, repeated ones. A thought, a reaction, a decision, again and again. That's how patterns form. Most people are not living intentionally. They're living reactively. They wake up and their mind starts running. Old thoughts, old worries, old fears, same stories, different day. And without realizing it, they follow the script. They feel stress, they feel pressure, they feel doubt before anything even happens. Why? Because the story started early, and they believed it. You've done this too, don't deny it. You wake up and immediately think about problems. You replay conversations. You imagine worst-case scenarios. You feel heavy without a real reason. That's not reality. That's your mind running a script. And if you don't interrupt it, it controls your entire day. You have a choice right there, at the start. You can follow the story, or you can question it. Most people don't question. They accept. That's why they stay stuck. You're not doing that anymore. Let's talk about control again. Not control over life, control over interpretation. Same situation, two people, different outcomes. One sees failure, stops, quits. The other sees feedback, adjusts, continues. Same event, different story, different life. That's the difference. You don't need better conditions, you need better control of your mind. Because conditions will never be perfect. People will disappoint you. Things will go wrong. You will fail. That's reality. But suffering, that often comes from the story you attach to it. Failure happens. The story says, "I'm not good enough." Now you suffer. Rejection happens. The story says, "I'm not valuable." Now you suffer. Mistakes happen. The story says, "I always mess things up." Now you suffer. Same events, different suffering. Why? Because of the story. That's why this matters. This is not small. This is everything. You don't fix your life by changing everything outside. You fix your life by changing how you see it. That's the real work. And it's uncomfortable because it removes your excuses. You can't blame your emotions anymore. You can't blame your thoughts. You can't say, "That's just how I feel." Because now you know, feeling is not truth. Now the responsibility is on you. You have a choice. Say it again. You have a choice. Now let's go even sharper. Your mind doesn't just create stories. It defends them, even when they're wrong. If you believe you're not confident, your mind will find proof. Every mistake, every awkward moment, every failure. It collects evidence, builds a case, strengthens the story. But it ignores the opposite, your wins, your progress, your strength. Why? Because it's biased toward what you already believe. So if you don't challenge it, it traps you. You stay inside one version of reality, limited, distorted, incomplete. That's dangerous. Because you stop seeing opportunities, you stop seeing growth, you stop seeing truth. You only see what confirms your story.
That's why awareness is not optional. It's necessary. You must question your mind. Not sometimes, consistently. You hear a thought, pause, ask, is this fact or interpretation? That question cuts through the noise. And if it's interpretation, you don't follow it blindly. You step back. You create distance. That distance is control.
Let's reinforce this. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the one observing both. That position, that awareness, is where your power lives. Most people never step into that position. They stay inside the storm. You step outside. You watch it. You don't become it. That's mastery. And again, this takes practice. You won't get it instantly. Your mind will try to pull you back. It will say, this is too hard. This won't work. You've always been like this. Another story. You see it now, and instead of believing it, you smile because you recognize the pattern. That's growth. You trained your reactions, now retrain them. Everything you're doing here is preparation, because in the next stage, you won't just observe the story. You'll face something harder. Your automatic reactions, the ones that happen before you think, the ones that feel uncontrollable, the ones you've repeated for years. That's where real change is required. Because knowing the story is not enough. You must break the reaction. And that's uncomfortable, because reactions feel fast, strong, immediate. But they're not unstoppable. They're trained, and anything trained can be retrained. Now you're ready. Not just to understand, but to confront. Because what comes next is where most people quit. They understand their thoughts, they see the stories, they even recognize the patterns. But when it comes to changing their reactions, they freeze. They fall back. They say, this is just who I am. No, this is what you've repeated. Let's make this clear before we move forward. You were not born reacting like this. You were trained, slowly, silently, repeatedly. Every environment shaped you. Every experience left a mark. Every emotional moment built a pattern. You got angry once, and it worked. You avoided something, and it felt safe. You shut down, and it protected you. So your mind learned. It said, do that again. And you did, again and again and again. Now it feels automatic. Now it feels like you, but it's not you. It's repetition. You trained your reactions. Now retrain them. Say it again. You trained your reactions. Now retrain them. Let's go deeper. Your brain is efficient. It doesn't want to think every time, so it creates shortcuts, habits. Not just physical habits, emotional ones. Trigger happens, reaction follows. No thinking, no pause, just action. That's not power. That's programming. And here's the hard truth. If you don't break that programming, you will repeat the same life. Different situations, same reactions, same outcomes. You don't get different results with the same reactions. You have a choice, right there, between stimulus and response. There is space. Most people never see it because it's small, because it's fast, because they've ignored it for years. But it's there. And that space is your power. You don't need to control the emotion. You need to control what happens next. That's the shift. You feel anger. Fine. You feel fear. Fine. You feel doubt. Fine. But what do you do after that? That's everything. Because feelings come automatically.
but reactions can be trained. Let's make this real. You're in a conversation. Someone says something that hits you. Instant reaction, defend, attack, shut down. Old pattern. Now, new approach. You feel it, you notice it, you pause. Just 1 second. That second changes everything, because now you are not reacting, you are choosing. That's control. At first, it will feel unnatural because your brain wants speed. It wants the old reaction. It wants the familiar path. But you interrupt it again and again. That's how new patterns are built. Not through motivation, through repetition. You trained your reactions. Now retrain them. And understand this. The first few times will feel weak. You'll pause, but still react. You'll try, but fail. That's normal, because your old habits are strong. They've been reinforced for years. But every time you try, you weaken them. Every time you pause, you create space. Every time you choose differently, you build a new pattern. That's how change happens. Slow, messy, but real. Most people quit here because they expect instant control. But control is built, not given. You don't go to the gym once and expect strength. Same here. You train your mind daily, moment by moment. Let's go even deeper. Your reactions are tied to identity. You say, I'm just an angry person. I'm anxious. I overthink. No, you've practiced those patterns. Identity is built from repetition. So if you change the repetition, you change the identity. You're not removing who you are, you're upgrading it. And that requires effort, consistency, awareness. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need approval. You need discipline, because discipline is what breaks automatic behavior. You don't wait to feel ready, you act differently anyway. That's the rule. Feel the urge, pause anyway. Feel the anger, stay calm anyway. Feel the fear, move forward anyway. That's how control is built. Not by eliminating emotions, but by overriding them. You have a choice, always, even when it feels impossible, even when it feels automatic, even when it feels strong. There is always a moment, a small gap, and inside that gap is your freedom. Most people never use it. They rush past it. You won't. You stop, you see it, you act with intention. That's the difference. And once you start doing this, something changes. Your reactions slow down. Your mind becomes clearer. Your actions become stronger. You stop being controlled. You start controlling. And your life begins to shift. Not because the world changed, but because you did. That's the power of breaking conditioned habits. You trained your reactions. Now retrain them. You've seen it now. Your reactions are not random. They are trained, conditioned, repeated. You've practiced reacting without thinking. You've built habits that feel automatic, that feel like identity. But they are not permanent. They can be changed. And now you know how. Pause, observe, choose. Simple, not easy, but powerful. Because every time you interrupt the pattern, you take your power back. Every time you choose differently, you rewrite who you are. You are no longer reacting, you are responding. And that changes everything. In the next chapter, we go even deeper into control.
Because knowing your reactions are trained is not enough. You must learn how to break them in real time. And it starts with one skill: the pause. Your emotions will never stop. They will always speak. They will always react. They will always try to take control. But now you see the truth. They are not facts. They are not commands. They are signals, nothing more. You have a choice every moment: obey or lead. Most people live their entire lives reacting. You won't. You will pause. You will think. You will act with control. Because the moment you master your emotions, you stop being controlled by life, and you start controlling it. Now ask yourself, will you continue reacting, or will you take control?